Welcome to Ask a Black Doctor. I am your host and moderator, Jasiri X. I am the co-founder and CEO of One Hood Media, and I'm, honored to be in a position to work directly with Gateway Medical Society around the show Ask a Black Doctor. We've been doing this now. I think this might be a year or coming up on a year. We started early May of last year. As a resource to provide information to our community as COVID-19 was, ravaging and disproportionately affecting our community. And a year later, we've been able to address topics beyond COVID-19. We talked about the vaccine. We've talked about cancer. We talked about, drug use. And now we talked about mental health, of course, as all of us are trying to, kind of power through this unprecedented time. And today we're going to have a conversation about obesity as it relates to COVID-19 and the pandemic. We want to, thank Gateway Medical Society. Shout out to the Pittsburgh Magazine, who did a great profile of, how Ask a Black Doctor came about. And so appreciate them. And, we're excited to have three doctors that we have not had on previously, on the show that are joining us today. And so, thank you. Nice intro music. That was shout out to Treble NLS. That was a Treble production on our intro music. And shout out to, John, putting that intro together for us, the power that you don't see behind this One Hood Media production. Shout out to Winscription, handling the business behind the scenes. So, we definitely, if you have any questions, feel free to, hit us in the chat. And so let's bring up our doctors. We'll have our doctors introduce themselves, and then we'll get into this conversation. So joining us, Dr. Smith, Dr. Carter, and Dr. Davis. Welcome to Ask a Black Doctor. I know this is all your first times. It's going to go smoothly. We're going to have a great time and a great conversation. So welcome. And I want to start with you, Dr. Smith. If you could just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, kind of how you got into this field, and then like what your specialty is.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Jasiri X for having me here today. I'm honored. So just a little bit about me. I am the First Lady of Destiny International Ministries. I'm married to Pastor Michael Smith. I'm also the Executive Director of THAW and founder of THAW, which stands for Transforming the Health of African American Women, where we work on evidence-based and culturally specific interventions to help change behaviors, as well as try to deal with other social determinants of health like community gardens and things like that. I'm also a program manager at the University of Pittsburgh's Medical Health Center in the health plan, where I work on health disparities and have the opportunity to sit on some of the committees that are working on the health disparities in Pittsburgh currently, in Homewood, McKeesport, and Hill District. Along with that, I'm also a personal trainer. So I started Camille Clarke LLC, which is it stands for mental wellness, mental wellness, physical fitness, and individual success. I believe in the mind, body, spirit connection. And my doctorate is in studies was in stress and African American women. So the topic today is really interested in obesity and how stress deals with obesity and how physical activity can really combat the stress that we're dealing with and discrimination. So I'm honored to be here today and be a part of this conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad you had time for us. You dropped a lot of stuff that you're doing and participated in. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. We really appreciate it. Dr. Carter, talk a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point and, what your specialties are.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Tameika Carter, a registered dietitian. I've been a registered dietitian for 17 years in a long-term care setting. My undergraduate is in clinical dietetics and nutrition, and my doctorate is in health and physical activity. My interests are first and foremost preventing chronic disease, but also the management of chronic disease.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Davis, you are representing not only yourself, but Gateway Medical Society. Talk a little bit about yourself, and if you can give us just a short background on Gateway Medical Society as well.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to participate in this conversation tonight. My name is Dr. Esa Davis. I'm an associate professor of medicine at the University of Pittsburgh in the School of Medicine. I am a family physician, and I do see patients down in Oakland and also at our Turtle Creek practice. I am also a physician researcher, and I have been studying actually the effects of obesity and obesity-related diseases and how it affects women and leads to cardiovascular disease. I'm very interested also in how changes during pregnancy, particularly weight change and obesity during pregnancy, not only complicates pregnancy for mom, but also with baby, and how during that time period, it can also be set women up for obesity and cardiovascular disease down the line. I'm the medical director of the UPMC Tobacco Treatment Service, and so provide treatment of tobacco use disorder in patients that come in to the hospital and also come in for surgery. I am a board member of the American Heart Association and also sit on the National Research Committee for the American Heart Association. And then more recently have been appointed to the United States Preventive Services Task Force, which I am not in my official hat tonight in, actually in my official hat as a Gateway physician and member. And with that, I will give a little statement about Gateway Medical Society. So the mission of Gateway Medical Society is to eradicate disparities in healthcare. The Gateway Medical Society was established in Pittsburgh in 1963 as a component of the National Medical Association, which represents underrepresented physicians, Black and brown physicians in the country. We work to promote public health and the general welfare of the community, and the emphasis has been on minority and disadvantaged populations. And our overall goal is to enhance the quality of health services to ensure and promote effective health education. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion with my colleagues tonight. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you all. I mean, very, very accomplished, and I think, perfectly suited for this conversation. But I did want to start before we get into obesity and kind of, nutrition and all of these different things that we want to talk about today. I did want to talk about something that was, you could, even deem historic in a way. The CDC recently came out and declared racism a serious public health issue. And I want to start with you, Dr. Davis. On 60 Minutes, David Williams, who's Harvard's public health professor, said that over 200 Black people die prematurely every day due to racial disparities. He spent a quarter of a century researching the impact of racism in health. How do you see this, like as a doctor, when we, because Pittsburgh has talked about it as well. We just had Councilman Burgess on our show, who led an effort for Pittsburgh to say racism is a public health issue. What does that mean to you as a doctor, and how should we be processing that in this moment?
Yeah, so I think it's been long overdue. I think we kind of have known this for a very long time as we see the health effects with the disparities that we have consistently seen for decades now, disparities in high blood pressure, disparities in heart disease, disparities in, Black mothers dying during and after pregnancy, high infant mortality. I mean, I think it has shown up in every single medical problem that really walks through my door every day, and all of the chronic illness that we see that has disproportionately affected us. And even, disproportionately affects us, even if we have the education and the income levels, we still see it, right? So it still affects us in the same way. And so, I think this is a step in the right direction to now name it nationally so that we can start putting more focused efforts onto solving the underlying cause, which is the racism. I think we've just been treating the effects for so long,
right.
And managing the effects, but now, being able to call attention to the source, hopefully that will lead us to invest more in dealing with the root cause and finally start to, change the course for a lot of our community members.
No, absolutely. I want to come to you, Dr. Smith, because, you know, when your intro, you talked about stress, and, you know, I like many, you know, many people, particularly Black people, you know, I was, you know, we were waiting to hear this verdict around George Floyd. You know, it was a relief that the verdict was guilty, but that day, you know, I you know, for myself personally, you know, I wasn't right, you know, because I didn't, you know, we didn't know if it was going to be guilty, and I was just so anxious as to what could come about, where, you know, because of my position, there was, you know, media that wanted to, you know, okay, the verdicts of, particularly they were like, the verdict's going to be announced. We have a verdict, and it took a while, and they were like, well, do we want to get your reaction? I just wasn't, you know, mentally, and it affected my physical being. You know, we're seeing all of these police killings. You know, the stress that is causing us. Like, how do we deal with this stress in this time, and what could that do to affect, like, even our health? You know, you talked about our mental and physical health being attached. Do you have any I guess advice you could give us as folks that are, you know, experiencing, seeing, you know, event after event that you know, causes us to be stressed or anxious at, you know, just the future of this country?
Right. I mean, what a loaded topic, but, you know, let me first touch on the impact of the stress. You know, my topic of my dissertation was a strong Black woman ideology, stress, and obesity amongst African-American women in the African-American church. And that's because of the intersectionality of racism and sexism. And this is just discrimination, right? And just how our mental being when we're discriminating, and just try being, you know, weathered, and you can't make a change. So think about the generational impact that slavery had on how the cultural norms that we've developed, the eating habits, the comfort foods, you know, like I always go back to people that, you know, the comfort food that we have was because we had no other choice. The chitlins was what leftovers, the fats that we put in. It's not something healthy, but it's something that we come to identify ourselves with, is what allowed us to be strong. Right, it's soul food, but it's not healthy for us, right? But one of the things that I always tell people is, like, I'm okay with that as a physical activity person. Enjoy what you need to enjoy, because of the emotional eating, right? And that's the problem that I have, is the multitude of times that we run to these foods when we're stressed out. And if you're in a state of racism, sexism, if you're LGBTQ or anything like that, you tend to, when you're stressed out, eat food that are comforting, high in sugar, high in cholesterol. Plus, it's easier to get to, right? So within racism, we have all these different inequities and also socioeconomic status that puts us in places of food deserts. So now we're around in these areas. That's the impact of racism from a social level, but the impact of racism from a personal level is also impactful and generationally. So we have these coping mechanisms, right? And that's that strong Black woman that I said gets developed from slavery. So when she's stressed out, but she takes care of everybody else. You heard Dr. Esa Davis talked about all the things that's on our plate. You heard me talk about all the things on our plate. But like you said, how do we make sure we stay sane, right? And when the pandemic hit, I probably burnt out, and I've been transparent. I've told people one of the things we tend to do is we keep things to ourselves. Be transparent. Sure. If you're not having a good day, just tell people. And a lot of times we say that we don't want to be transparent because we feel like we're giving someone a weapon to use against us, or giving someone power. But when you release that, the power that's released, because they can't use it against you, and you find out other people are dealing with the same thing. So the first thing is to be transparent with yourself. Take that time to reflect. I get up in the morning. I know it's just going to be insane, but at 3 o'clock, my time is loaded. But I put myself as priority, so that I make sure my mind is ready for what's to come. I mean, right now it's really, you know, I work at UPMC, and as we talk about health disparities, we've seen these numbers. These numbers aren't new. It's not like, and now they're finding out that people are now interested in it, and now people are putting more things. But people like us are exhausted. We've been fighting this battle for so long, and now you're finding it interesting. But now when it's time to move forward, we're getting tired, you know. Can we push forward? So, you know, like, so that kind of stress, I had to make sure that my mind was sound. And I'm a first lady, so I believe in God. I go back to the word. I make sure my mind, body, and spirit. So I believe in the promises of God. I believe in the word. I don't believe in man. I believe in the word, that he will comfort me at all times. So if I run to him in time of need. And when I take about spirituality, if you're not even a Christian, but whatever that is, that person, that purpose, that's who you are, reconnect. And that's one of the things I heard in the pandemic. A lot of people, like you talked about, Jasiri, you started getting your health back. So people are starting starting to walk, they're starting to find out what is really valued. They're starting to question their core beliefs and, you know, what have gotten them so to this way. So I tell people, if you're going through that right now, that frustration, take that time to reflect and wonder where those mindsets might come. If you're trying to change a behavior, what might have been holding you back? Because a lot of times emotional eating and the lack of physical activity has to do with some kind of mental health fatigue, actually, and or some kind of coping mechanism that's not healthy. So that's one of the things. And walk it off. That's one of the best things you can do. I hear people like, you know, I'm feeling tight, I'm feeling stressed. The stress tightens up your muscles, your joints. Since your joints is correlated to obesity, diabetes, fibromyalgia, and rheumatoid arthritis. So, you know, if anything that you can do, and you can hear it in the COVID-19, one of the things we tell people is don't panic, stay calm, because the body also sends out cortisol levels, which now decreases your immune system. So just stay calm.
No, thank you. That was a great. Oh, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah,
Dr.
I just wanted to add on to something that Dr. Smith said, because this idea of when you increase this desire for comfort food during the time of stress is actually very biological, and she just alluded to it at the end. You know, what ends up happening is, you know, our bodies most of the time want to maintain a steady state level, you know, what we call homeostasis. It wants to be on even kill. But what ends up happening when we're stressed, our body perceives that as a threat, right? And in any kind of a threat situation, you either want to run or you want to fight, but your body underneath the skin is trying to get prepared for that. And the way it does that, it sends out a bunch of hormones, cortisol and all of these emergency hormones that will help get things going in the body, help you to release more sugar up to the brain so that you can think more clearly. It'll make you crave, actually, you know, the cortisol levels that are high, when they stay high over a period of time, they will actually make you crave calorie dense foods purposely, because that is the energy that you actually need if you were to fight, right? Wow. But, you know, and so it's getting prepared. Your blood pressure is going up, your heart rate's going up, your muscles getting tense, because you're trying to prepare yourself to deal with the threat. And most of the time when the threat is acute, right, something short-lived, it's protective. You deal with it, and once it's over, your body then recedes back to normal. But what we live under every day is chronic stress. And so those systems in your body are always activated, always on. And so you can imagine having them always on over time. There's a wear and tear that happens, right, in those emergency response systems in the body. And then they tend to break down over time. And that is the pathway that we see to a lot of this chronic illness, with having elevated blood pressure, or to end up having obesity or having dementia. We know that, you know, elevated stress levels over a period of time will also damage your nerve cells in your brain and lead to dementia. So we know that all of these pathways happen. And I think it's important for people to be aware that while we perceive something kind of mentally, that, and even though we, like Dr. Smith said, we deal with it, we're strong when we just kind of go with the flow and keep doing it, underneath the skin, our body's still trying to keep up, and it's still trying to, wow, you know, deal with this threat. And if we don't allow it to have a chance to repair itself, and if we don't provide it the proper foods for the energy that we need, it will break down. It's just like a car, right? If you don't take care of your car over time, it will start to fall apart and break down, and our bodies will do the same thing.
Wow, you know, I've never heard it broken down like that, and I appreciate that. You know, because you put like a science on it, and just like you said, if you're black and you're, you know, I would say, like, as a black person living in Pittsburgh, it's almost like you feel like you're always under threat, like you're always being threatened on some level. Or even if it's not, you're not going out, you're at home, and you're just, you know, I'm on social media, and it's story after story after story. And like, what effect does that have on you? And I agree with you, Dr. Smith, about that spirituality. You know, as Muslims, this is the month of Ramadan. And it's really kind of that once a year to kind of, you know, set your spiritual focus back to where it needs to be. So I do agree that spiritual piece is necessary. I wanted to come to you, Dr. Carter, because even, we talk about racism as a public health issue. It also affects, and we already talked about food, but then even access to food, right? One of the things that I started to do as we got into this pandemic is I felt like, okay, I need to eat healthier. I live in East Liberty. I have access to Whole Foods, there's Trader Joe's and all that. A lot of times in our community, we don't have access to, foods that are nutritious. Dr. Smith mentioned food deserts. Like, how do we then, build a proper diet or a nutritious diet when we're at a point now where even sometimes the healthiest foods are those that are most expensive?
Right, and that's why racism is such a problem for the African American community, because a lot of the communities are food deserts. You don't have the access to the fresh fruits and the vegetables to have a healthy diet. So some of the things that you could do is, start community gardens. I see a lot of the African American communities are starting community gardens. I think that's an excellent idea. There needs to be some type of programming for, how do we get those people who can't get to the grocery stores that are so far away, like a community, with like a transportation system. Right. As a community, we need to come together and, help each other out to get to these things that are not always afforded to the communities of people of color.
Right. I know some folks have done some like farmers markets and stuff as well. All those are incredible ideas. And so thank you all, because I know we were talking about, the focus is obesity. But I felt like we needed to kind of talk about, what we've experienced this week, particularly as Black people, and how it affected our health. So I appreciate you all being willing to pivot on that point. I'll come back to you, Dr. Davis, because one of the questions that Dr. Johnson sent us, and she preps me, and I appreciate it because I'm not a doctor, and I'm an artist. I need help. But one of the great questions to me, and Kiana just put it in the chat, is what's the difference between being overweight and obese? What's the difference in whether it is like physically or even health wise? What is the difference between those two things?
Yeah, so overweight and obesity, the way we kind of define it clinically is usually we use your body mass index, right? So your body mass index is a measure that takes into account your height and your weight. So your weight relative to your height. Right. And to be overweight, your overweight merely is just having your muscles and your what we call adipose tissue or fat. So being overweight or having more pounds for your height is just roughly being overweight. So a body mass index of what we say 25. And like 19 to 25 is normal. So a body mass index of 25 to 27 is considered overweight. And then a body mass index that is 30 and above is considered obese. The difference between obesity and overweight is, so obesity is when your body stores too much excess fat for your height. And such that it will then start to increase your risk of having things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, your blood sugars will go up. And it's also where that fat is located. So you can have fat that is located around your organs, and you can have fat that is like more in your legs or around your hip area. But it's that storage, that excess storage of fat that is too much for your height and your weight is considered obesity. And we put a number on that, a body mass index of 30 or above. but you could be overweight and not necessarily be obese. So we have a lot of people who are athletes, where they are very muscular and they don't have any body fat on them. They could be overweight, right? Because their muscles weigh a lot for their height, but they don't necessarily have to be obese. So obesity is really about having excess storage of fat that is too much for your height and your weight.
Yeah, you know, that was clear. I want to come to you, Dr. Smith, because some of the statistics that Dr. Johnson had sent to kind of prep for the show, one of them was 80% of African American women are overweight and obese. You talked about your work being, primarily with Black women. So how do we, because I know this can also be a sensitive topic for folks, and we definitely don't want to, shame folks or disrespect folks. And even that, the topic is like, we're talking about obesity can be considered controversial. How do you approach the topic with, some of the folks that you're dealing with and you're working with, in a way that it's sensitive and it's not, we're not, disrespecting people or blaming people or shaming them for where they might currently be?
So first, I'm very empathetic, only because I used to be 265 pounds. And I know at that point in time what led me to it. And that's probably what led me to my research about stress, because at the time, like you can say, I'm high anxiety. I use food. I'm from Jamaica. I migrated here. And being an immigrant here was difficult. Being a Black female immigrant here was difficult. So I use food. So when I talk to people, I don't really tackle obesity. I tackle health. Because the things for me, when I look at the obesity, is the factors to obesity. It's usually I'm eating bad, or I'm not eating healthy, or I'm eating too much, or not the right food, which has more calories, or most people are so tired and fatigued, mentally fatigued, that they don't have the energy to work out. So if I come in here and tell you to change your life, it's going to be a difficult task, because I haven't changed your barriers. I haven't changed the fact that you don't have enough money. So me telling you it's going to be, that's what I found was a difficult thing when I went into the, certain communities, even where I started with Camille Clarke LLC, I was dealing with the 10% of the world who can afford my prices, right? And I saw them dealing with obesity and overweight as well, and tackling that, even on the top level, whether I'm going to keep my job, whether I'll be on the president or promotions, the issues and the stress were different, but they were using the same mechanism, which was food. And that's why I looked at African American women, because it's 82% of African American women are overweight, but about 42% who are obese, which is 2 times more than Caucasian women, which is what led me to racism and sexism, the intersectionality of both. An African American woman took the charge of hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and so many others, which is why I put the 2 intersectionalities of discrimination and her tendency to, and that's the development of the strong Black woman that just never takes time for self-care, never always puts others before them. They're so fatigued that they lead themselves to not want to work out. So when we look at these numbers, it always goes back to the social determinants. And that's why I think racism, when they put racism as a public health issue, it is, because it has led to the disparities of today, the inequities and the feelings of less value, where we put ourselves and our culture norms and our coping mechanisms, right? So, so obesities, so these numbers, I would say definitely.
Change
the barriers? I just have to say, once we change the barriers, and I love a lot of the stuff that gateway society is trying to do, and once we deal with these social determinants of health in the community, education and everything like that, and then we can not say assimilate, but learn to find ourselves again and realize that this way of eating is not for us, because it's just because of the weathering of it all, I believe, in my opinion, that's leading to some of these issues.
I agree. I think the other thing to focus on, I try to focus on with my patients, and I hope some of them are listening, they can check me on it. But I think is, it's also, I tell them, everyone has they're going to have their body types. And my goal is not to make everyone thin, because thin is not necessarily healthy either. There are a lot of very thin people walking around on the verge of death too. So it's not about being thin, but it is about being fit. And so it's refocusing on this idea of getting healthy, right? And I want their numbers to reflect that too. And so, part of it is understanding that, getting here didn't happen overnight. And so, getting healthy is not going to necessarily happen overnight. It's going to take time, but there's no rush, right? There's no rush to do it, right? I have to lose 10 pounds in a month. Why, right? There's no reason to do that. But there is a waking up every day and being intentional about, today I'm going to eat healthy, or I'm going to eat well. And it's just making small changes. Today I'm going to eat more water. I'm going to substitute out, a high sugary drink for water. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to get out, and maybe I can't walk 30 minutes a day. Maybe I'll just walk 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Just be consistent in small, and those, or I might not be able to do 30 minutes at one time. Maybe I can do 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunch, 5 minutes when I get home at night, right? It's really kind of, focusing on making changes. And then what you'll see is you'll start to feel more energized. You'll start to feel better. You'll start to get into, and I always encourage everyone, I know a lot of people like to cook, or I hope people like to cook, and I know there's this perception that we don't have time to cook. I actually, my husband and I actually cook every night, and we were like that too. Like, we don't have time to cook. It's easier to just get that thing and pop it in the microwave. But that's not true. It takes all of like 5 to 10 minutes to put some fresh vegetables in the oven and roast it, or frozen vegetables in the oven and roast it for 10 minutes while you take your clothes off. And right. So I think it's getting back to, thinking about the small changes that you can make every day. It's getting back to not focusing on how your body looks, but getting back to how you feel, getting back to knowing your numbers, knowing that if your blood pressure is up, let me work to get my blood pressure down. Let me work to get my blood sugar down. Let me work to get, right? It's more of that idea. And we're all not going to be thin because we don't have that genotype to be thin, and that's okay. But we all can work to be healthier, to be able to, walk. If we couldn't walk a block, this month, but maybe in 6 months, I can walk a block without being short of breath, or I can walk a flight of stairs without being short of breath. So setting small goals and being consistent, I think we'll see progress over time.
No, that's a great point. I want to bring you in, Dr. Carter, because, a lot of times when we talk about, health, obesity, overweight, people have diets, and, sometimes a diet, can maybe make you lose weight, but not necessarily be healthy. Sometimes folks go on diets, and it's kind of you go on this diet, it's a 6-month thing, and then end up kind of gaining more weight kind of after the diet, just because kind of the functioning or keeping the diet up sometimes can be difficult. What advice do you give in terms of people that, really, taking the advice that, Dr. Smith gave and Dr. Davis gave, by like changing like what you eat, to do it in a way that not only is healthy, but they can like maintain it over time?
I agree with a lot of what Dr. Smith and Dr. Davis said. You need to make small, attainable goals. A lot of reasons why the diets that are like popular right now don't work is because they're very restrictive, and there's things that you can't continue to do forever. You want to focus on making lifestyle changes, things that you can do a year from now, and it's not causing you harm, or you're not leaving out specific food groups or specific foods. Just making healthier choices all the way around about what you eat and how physically active you are.
No, that's a great point. I did want to bring you back, Dr. Davis. This is a question from Celeste Smith, who is my wife, by the way. Shout out to Celeste. She asked, a lot of times people say the charts at the hospital doctors are for white people. Is this true? Are there different BMI goals for Black folks?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And there's been some debate about, whether or not the BMI charts really are applicable across various groups, people of color and also athletes, right? But they are what we have right now in terms of being able to give some sense of a measure of your weight relative to your height. So it's a good estimate that people use. The other estimate that's probably a little bit better is your waist circumference, measuring your waist circumference. And usually that gives us a better indication of your body, your body fat that is around your organs. And that is actually, more significant than, let's say, body fat that is just located in your legs or your hips, because the body fat that's more around your waist, that has been linked more to cardiovascular disease and increased risk of stroke. And so, and the reason for that is because that is in that area is more around the vital organs, and there's some thought that it interferes with a lot of the the liver's functions and the things of that nature, and that's what causes some of these abnormalities that we see in blood sugar and stuff. So I would say following your waist circumference is important, and also just weighing yourself daily is important. Not doing a calculation for height and weight, but just getting on the scale and just tracking your weight daily is very helpful to just keep your goals in mind of where you're headed, and then looking at that over time to see how your weight can changes and what influences it. If it's, we mentioned stress, like if you're going through a particular stressful time, you may notice that your weight will go up during that time, or right after the stress it will go down. So I think tracking tracking your weight and tracking your waist circumference is helpful.
No, thank you for that. That was very detailed and appreciated. I want to come to you, Dr. Smith, with a question, and it's why is it harmful to be overweight? You talked about like social determinants and everything. Like, are all of these things magnified by being overweight? Like, why is it harmful, and why is it important for us to really look at our weight as a determinant of our overall health?
Dr. Davis just mentioned a lot of it. The organs, where the weight is, the heaviness of it all on the bones and the joints. I tend to, for overweight, for African Americans, I don't look at overweight. I look at mostly obesity. Obesity is the number that I really focus on for overweight, because we tend to carry a little bit more voluptuous, and studies have said we have more black matter and stuff like that, like Dr. Davis said. So overweight, it becomes an issue when it's impacting your health. If you can't walk because your joints are impacted and you need joint, that means you're carrying too much weight, overweight. So, or if it's impacting your joints or some your organs, some people can't sleep. They get sleep apnea if they're overweight. This is when it becomes a problem. Like Dr. Davis said, it's about health. It's not about your size. It's about whether you're functioning in an overall quality of health in your life. That's what I pay attention to, because like she said, the scales can be off, BMI, muscle mass, fat mass. I do body fat percentage to gauge mine, to really know. I take calipers or hydrostatic weighting. So I just want to clarify that overweight is just if it's impacting your health and the organs, and your blood pressure is going up. Because I've seen people who are overweight have better health, like Dr. Davis said, than anybody else who's thin. So it's all about your health. Focus on the health.
Right. How you feel? I like that. I want to come to you, Dr. Carter, because we had questions about the keto diet. Is the keto diet safe? And if you can, just give us a little bit of background on what is the keto diet.
Well, I don't want to say whether it's safe or not, but I don't recommend it. I don't give it to clients. I think that if you follow a diet that's includes all the food groups and make healthy choices, that you could have just as much success. A short term, I think keto does give you the results that you're looking for as far as how you look. I don't think that it gives you the health benefits of making healthy choices and living a healthy lifestyle. So go ahead.
I was going to say, is that the one where you just eat all the meat? Like, which one is keto?
It's very high in
high
fat
protein
and
one.
very low in carbohydrates.
Got you.
So I think
yeah, go ahead.
Everything in moderation, I think, is what you really should focus on. Carbohydrates, focus on the more complex carbohydrates, the whole grains and plant-based proteins, lean proteins, but to be so restrictive. I just don't recommend it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I agree.
Oh, you want to talk about
I agree.
I
agree with her wholeheartedly. And the thing I wanted to point out to people is that when you're thinking about a healthy weight, there are really three things that go into it, right? So the first thing is calories, right? The amount of calories. Too many calories in, not enough calories burned off will lead to weight gain. The other thing is the composition of what you eat. So just like Dr. Carter said, the types of food that you eat. And the third thing is the amount of food that you eat, right? So it's all three of those things. And I know some people will focus on either one of those things and not the other three, but it's really thinking about all three of those things, because you could eat they'll say, I've had patients say, well, I don't eat that much, right, in terms of the amount. But if you look at what they do eat, it's very calorie dense. So they're actually eating a lot of calories. They may not be eating a lot of food, but a lot of calories. Or there are some people that will eat, you could eat a big plate of food, right? You could eat a huge plate of fruits and vegetables, like, a big salad, and have very, very few calories in that salad, unless you put on the ranch dressing, and then that's where you get calories. I know how it works. So, because I have patients that tell me, I only eat salad. I'm like, I know. What do you put on top of it?
Cheese on it, the eggs on it.
And that ranch rested on top. So, but it's really thinking about all three of those things, right? All three of those things that you want to focus on. You want to eat the right types of food. You want to eat, you really do want to know how many calories you eat. And I think a lot of people don't know how many calories they're actually getting. And until you actually track your calories, you really don't know, because a lot of foods are very calorie dense, and it's very easy to overeat the amount of calories that you need for how active you are. So if you're an athlete and you're burning calories, you could eat 1,200 calories, 12,000 calories, but if you're sitting on the couch most of the day, you can't eat that much, right? And so it really is thinking about all three of those things, which are going to help influence, your weight loss and your weight, how much, healthy weight you can maintain.
No, you make a great point. I know there's like several apps where you can kind of track your calories and, track your steps in your exercise. But I'm coming to you, Dr. Smith, and we want some of this 10% advice that you get that you give out. And this is a great question. Is there a best time to exercise? Is there a best form of exercise? And did I hear you say you get up at 3 a.m? I hope that's not the best time.
Yes, 3 a.m.
I might not be exercising if that's the best time, but is there a best time to exercise, and is there a best form of exercise in your experience?
So best time, I always say it depends. Once again, I train clients to compete in figure competitions. I train clients for weight loss. I train clients just to be healthy, right? So it depends on what your goals are. So like if I had clients who are really trying to lose weight, I say get up in the morning on a fasted stomach if you'd like to do something like that. But that can be unhealthy as well. So it all depends. So depending on where you are health-wise. I always say when you feel the best, that way you have the energy. And if you don't have the energy, I always say get it done in the morning. If you're like if you know at the end of the day, you're just not going to get it done because you're too exhausted, put it in the morning, first thing in the morning if you can. Like Dr. Davis said earlier, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes of walking here. So there's never a time. 30 minutes is what we want of moderate physical activity, at least most days of the week, right? 150 minutes. If you can do vigorous, if you're doing sprinting or anything like that, you can do that 2 or 3 times of the week. I like calisthenics and a high intensity kind of workouts if it's something quick that I need. But that's if you have that time and you have the energy level and you're healthy and your doctor, you don't have any jointal issues, you can do those jumping and push-ups. But if you have an injury, water aerobics is something great. It's easier on the joints. Maybe you can take a Zumba class, something that you enjoy. I always tell people, let it be something that you enjoy so it can be habitual. It could be something that is routine as that. You can go hiking with your girlfriends. You can say, I'm going to take a little belly dancing class. I believe in things that focus on the core structure because a lot of times injuries can also, the pain that you feel can prevent you from working out. So I'll tell people, like Pilates, put a little bit of strength training in there where you're working on your core. So a little bit of balance, flexibility, a little bit of strength training and some cardio. will get you a long way. And if you want to know standard numbers, 150 minutes of cardio, about 45 minutes a week, 2 days a week of flexibility exercise, and strength training about 3 days a week of 30 minutes. So just around those numbers. But feel free to start anywhere. You don't have to get those numbers. Just starting something. If you're starting from nothing, is a big change. So
just a quick follow, because I know now, you know, a lot of the gyms were closed, folks were inside. You have a lot of folks kind of, you know, that could afford like a Peloton or something like that. Is there, you know, or have you seen some, like, where I'm in the house, I mean, maybe like a YouTube channel or something that you saw that you would recommend, like, you know what, this is somebody that has a good exercise program. This is something that's also fun. Do you have anything, or do you have that?
Well, we do. So in the pandemic, one of the things we started was Fit for God yoga. So what we had before was a program called BY, which was boxing, yoga, exhale. And the thought was boxing was going to get rid of the stress that you had, get physically, something fun that you didn't think about. And yoga was to get rid of the tension. So you said bye to your stress, and hopefully it didn't emotionally eat. But what we gravitated to, because it was difficult to replicate, that was Fit for God yoga, and basically advising people to take walks in around their house and things like that. So those are the, that's releases on Sundays at 7 a.m. But now we're taking a break, and there's videos on our website that we're releasing. I'm a big Peloton fan. So every morning, it's probably, it was my therapy. It's great. They have great community out there. And that's one of the things I'll say, find any kind of workout, it has to be something that you feel connected with, because it's going to make you feel accountable. You have a relationship, and my Peloton, they have a really community, but that's too expensive. And there's so many out there. I know health plans were releasing videos all the time. So look at your emails from your health plan. YouTube, you can also use, if you have on demand, there's an exercise class on demand. There's so many different places that to tell you where to go would be limiting you, but I'm telling you, it's out there. Also, if you go to our Thaw Facebook page, thawinc.org or Thaw Inc. 2 on Facebook, there's some videos on there that we do release every night on Transformation Thursdays during the COVID-19. But the best thing you can do if you're stuck at home is, if you have stairs, just, you know, and you don't have any knee issues, you can use the stairs and walk up the stairs, maybe use it as a run, passively walk around the house in your community, wear your mask, you know, take time, you take a jog every now and again. You can change it from a run to a jog, to a run jog, to a jog, whatever you'd like. So, but that's how we were, right? That's how we stayed physically active. We didn't have any equipment, right? We were just walking or running away from animals, or picking up or gardening and doing harvest and stuff like that. So we can go right back to that. We don't need equipment to stay active.
No, that's a great point. I want to come to you, Dr. Davis, because you know, and because we're talking about, you know, obesity and exercise, you know, the New York Times actually put an article out recently that said that regular exercise may help protect against severe COVID. That they did a study of 50,000 Californians who developed COVID and found that those who had been most active before falling ill were the least likely to be hospitalized and die as a result of the illness. Another study talked about patients who are overweight or obese have more severe COVID-19 and are more likely to require invasive respiratory support as well. Have you been seeing that? And, you know, should that be, you know, because we still are in the midst of a global pandemic, you know, should that be reason enough for folks to get active?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's true. I mean, even before COVID, we do know that regular exercise has a strong effect on the immune system in terms of keeping the immune system strong for a variety of reasons. I mean, one is, as Dr. Smith said, just the ability to decrease that stress, which stress is going to, suppress or decrease your immune system. Being able to exercise, and when you do that, you release all of these different chemicals in your brain that actually help to make you feel better, perceive that you're feeling better. And so your immune system will respond to that. It also has direct effects on your heart health and your blood pressure and your lung capacity and your lung function. So, you know, all of those things are going to be the things that you need to help fight infection, particularly an infection like COVID that has a tendency to affect the lungs primarily, and also the heart. So as much as you can do to keep those organs as strong as they can to help fight, and certainly your immune system to be able to produce all of the immune cells and that it needs to attack and kill the virus, you're going to do better. And that's true beyond COVID. I mean, we before COVID, we would see, and I'm sure many people probably experience that, you think about when you were more likely to get sick, right? You were more likely to get sick when you were working hard at work or staying up late, right? And all of a sudden you caught a cold or caught the flu, right? So as long as you were eating right, you were exercising, and the other thing I think we haven't talked about is sleep, getting a good night's sleep. It all goes a long way to keep your immune system strong and give you what you need to fight against, particularly something as deadly as COVID. So absolutely.
No, that's an excellent point. And to you, Dr. Carter, I know we're talking about building an immune system, and I know particularly when we kind of first started this show, we talked a lot about what should I be eating to build my immune system? Like what vitamins should I be taking? What superfoods should I be ingesting? Are there recommendations that you have for folks that these vitamins or these foods are foods that will help build our immune system, and maybe stuff that we should be looking at consuming in this time?
Yes, fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, foods high in vitamin C, high in zinc, your elderberry. You want to have lots of fresh fruits and vegetables.
Thank you. So I'm coming to you, Dr. Smith. This is a question. Well, it says to Dr. Davis, but I'll ask you, Dr. Smith, as well. It says, is it safe to go back to the gym if we're vaccinated? Folks are getting vaccinated. I think maybe half of Pennsylvania is vaccinated, which I think they said for the bigger states is doing really, really well. I don't know. Is it safe to go back to the gym now that folks are vaccinated?
I mean, so probably the overall answer is yes, right? And I think the more people get vaccinated, the safer it will become. Even with that, though, you still want to make sure that if you do choose to go back to the gym, I would still try to go when it's not so populated. I would try to go when, there aren't that many people there, because even you may be vaccinated, other people may not be vaccinated. Making sure that you wipe down the equipment is very important, and make sure that you continue to wear your mask during that time, and making sure that you are social distancing. So I still think that even though you can go back, and a lot of gyms are making accommodations for people to come back, you still want to make sure that you follow all of the continued precautions. Because, the other part about the vaccine, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that you can't get COVID. I think we should say that. It just means that should you get COVID, you are protected from going to the hospital, needing, to be on a ventilator and hopefully not dying, right? So it's protecting us all from that severe infection, but doesn't mean that you won't necessarily get COVID. Until everyone has been vaccinated enough where the virus stops jumping around, then eventually one day it will be true that we're all vaccinated and we won't get COVID anymore, because it won't be able to jump from person to person. But in the meantime, you still can get COVID having the vaccine. So I would say, yes, you can go back to the gym with all of the same precautions that we're currently doing.
Absolutely. Are you doing similar stuff, Dr. Smith, where you are?
Trying to find my mute button.
Yes,
I agree. The same thing. You make sure to wear your mask. We make sure to clean down. So where we are, I, as a trainer, always have my mask with my clients. I wipe down before every time, because I don't know who touched it. And then before I give it to them, I wipe it off, and I wipe it off before I put it back. Because like Dr. Davis said, you can still get it. Not everybody's vaccinated. So, and we, like she said, go to times. It's still empty, somewhat empty. And if you're feeling somewhat, make sure the gyms have every single wipe. So some gyms are not filled, but make sure the wipes are filled. If you don't feel comfortable, do a check before you go in, and make sure they have wipes in every corner, so that you'd be able to have precautionary if you were in there.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. So one more quick question for you, Dr. Carter. Somebody, when you listed a bunch of things, Irish sea moss was a question. Is that something, is that good? Is that immune boosting? Is that something that we should be taking right now?
I don't know. I'm actually not familiar with Irish sea moss, so I'll have to investigate that.
Okay, we're gonna get back One Hood Media. We're gonna get back our organization. We'll get back to you around Irish sea moss. So we got 5 minutes left. I guess I'll come to you, Dr. Davis. Like, are we? And I've asked this, I think, the last 3 times. Have we turned the corner at this point? I mean, it's getting warmer outside. You do see more folks are getting vaccinated. But school is back in. Are we? Yeah. How do you feel about where we are right now?
What you asking me? What you really asking me?
Is it going to be like right? Is it going to be a hot? Is it going to be a hot girl summer? When are we?
No, we are not there yet. We are not there yet. Gotcha. And I know that's probably the feeling that everybody has, right? Like your kids riding in the car, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there? No, we're not there yet. We're getting close. I think the thing is, are we vaccinating? Yes. Are the vaccines continue to route? As you know, in Pennsylvania, we just lowered the age now down to 16 and opened it up to everybody. And so hopefully, people are getting their vaccine. They are, but there are still a group of people who are hesitant, right? And I think continuing to talk with one another and making sure people are understanding what the vaccines do, and that in this regard, that the more people that get vaccinated, the closer we will get away from this pandemic. And so it is really important that we continue to do that. And it is important that we continue to wear our masks, that we continue to wash our hands, that we continue to social distance, because we have seen a rise in cases in Allegheny County over the past several weeks since spring break. It looks like it may it's starting to plateau off a little bit. But, one of the things to remember, that as we see counts go up, cases go up, there's always a lag time between hospitalizations and death that follow, because we'll see the rise first and then we'll see the other 2 bumps after that. So I think, we're getting there. We're not quite there yet. And, of course, we're now at a little bit of an urgency because we have these variants that are also out there that are happening. And the goal is to get ahead of the variants. Now, right now, our vaccines that we have are protective against the variants that are out there, the B117, which is the one from the UK. But it is important that we get enough people vaccinated to stop other variants from happening. And, of course, finding that variant that won't be protected by the vaccine. So I think it is important for everybody to do their part. I know, the weather is warmer. That's great. At least now people will be able to be outside a little more, as opposed to being inside around people and spreading it. So that will help. But everyone, especially in our community, I really, really strongly urge you to make sure, if you have an opportunity to get the vaccine, that you get the vaccine. I've got my vaccine. I tell everybody that they need to get their vaccine. If you have concerns about it, please talk to your doctor. I don't know how many people know, but and I'm sure you've had shows about this, so I won't belabor it, but I do want people to know that the technology around these vaccines is not new. These technologies have been around for decades. It's just that we applied these technologies to a new virus, to this particular situation. And also the leading scientist that came up with this was a Black woman. So I think, we should take, so all the other myths out there that have been happening, really research, talk to your physicians, and I encourage you all to get your vaccine. It is our weapon of protection right now, because it is real in terms of people, dying and people coming in to the hospital that we see. The good news is that the over 65 group, we have now not seen those admissions as much anymore. I mean, now what we're seeing are the younger people that are coming into the hospital. So those are the people that are now being admitted, and mostly because they weren't vaccinated, and mostly because, there's been this a little bit of relaxation in some of the precautions. So, I would just say, everybody just hold on a little bit longer, yes. Do your part, and we can get through this, but we do need to protect one another.
Thank you so much. Any last words of advice, Dr. Smith, that you have for folks, and or even, you know, how we can, you know, stay in touch with you and the great work that you're doing?
Sure, yeah. Where you can follow us on Facebook, like I said, on Thaw Inc. 2, at Thaw Inc. 2. We're also, our website is thawinc.org, THAWINC.org. And I just want to say stay positive and stay connected and stay with the community and just stay positive.
Absolutely. Thank you. We made it, Dr. Carter. You have any final thoughts for our community?
Just to make healthy decisions. Don't focus on, you know, the weight loss. Focus on making decisions that you can continue every day to be healthier, healthier mentally, healthier physically, healthy spiritually.
No, that's great advice. Excellent advice. Well, thank you. We made it to the Ask a Black Doctor. We thank you all for being, for first timers, you all were wonderful. You all were, you know, well prepared and gave incredible answers. We want to thank again Gateway Medical Society and Dr. Johnson and Kiana for, you know, really helping us to put everything together. And we will see you all next month on another episode of Ask a Black Doctor. Peace, y'all.
Thank you.
Everyone.